This can. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Dan Winter of fractalfield.com and Phiray.com, and I'm here with the amazing Sean Callahan from Plasma Medbed in Virginia. And Sean is the senior leader of our teams around the world. He was the person that arranged the most of the dealerships for the Phiray, and now he's leading the way with the Phiray and having amazing experiences, and with the PZOFire, and has stories to tell. And as he just said, the future is here. Hello, Sean.
And great to see you again. Great to connect. And, I'm always so excited to spend time with you because, for somebody like myself, I deal with so much technology. There's so much technology. We've talked about a lot of the technology that's out there, but, there's nothing, Dan, on the planet Earth that can touch the technology that you're producing right now. It is by far the most powerful technology on the planet Earth, and it's nothing less than a great blessing to be able to represent the technology, which I consider to be a huge responsibility because what it can do to help people is off the charts. And Dan, the other thing is on a daily basis, because I'm also still in the medical field and I deal with acute care and really intense medical situations where we provide a lot of home care into homes for people that are really messed up. Now, I just sent a bunch of stuff out to the Philippines. We're building a new hospital in Guatemala. We're still doing a lot of stuff on a big scale, but it's the high-end ICU and the high-end ICU patients that I talk to on a daily basis that come to me for very high-end health care. And to be able to express that there's possibilities and there's hope and that the future of technology is here now. There's really nothing to wait for. And I'm so excited. I love the technology so much. And here in beautiful Richmond, Virginia, we make the technology accessible to anybody and everybody. So on a weekly basis, we have people here from Ohio, from Tennessee. I just had people in from Florida. And they get to come and spend time with us, and we get to basically document these, I call them sort of case studies of people coming in for such a wide variety of different things. And, to see the benefit that this technology is doing to help people is just, it's absolutely, it's just such an honor. So thank you once again for spending time with me here in my little area here, which it's like my little home away from home, but thank you for all of that.
Well, yes, and Sean has a depth of experience in many of these technologies. Of course, he has the Phiray behind him there, and the PZOFire behind him, and the PiezoFire. Sean is having more and more fun with that, and we're going to talk about these things, and which is wonderful. But I thought maybe we'd even start with some background. It's sort of like people are asking for more context and comparison. And also we're going to try to give some guidance for people who are using these technologies, particularly Phiray and PiezoFire. But background here that, Sean called this the Plasma Medbed and USA Medbed. And just to give a little background theory here, the core of what actually is a medbed. Most of what's talked about as medbed is myth because there's nothing really solid in the literature. But from what we understand with a lot of ET sources as well, there are two aspects essentially. One is a phase conjugate negentropic time reversing field effect. And at that, we're very good because we have more broad spectral, for example, than the EE system. So broad spectral negentropy, phase conjugate, is called time reversal in the specific sense that it creates self-organization. And by the way, our world-class, rated #1 on the planet grand unified field theory, now we have the physics, solid physics, to support this. fractalgut.com. Today's report there is confirmation of the study of negentropy based on my original work, and it's been unpacked in wonderful physics. So if anybody wants the solid physics behind it, we got it. It's fractalgut.com. MedBedMD.com, negentropy. Now, the other part of what was called medbed, which actually is not implicate here in what we're doing, is they used that same time reversal to increase the rate of development of stem cells. And time reverse causes what they call dedifferentiation. And then they would immerse that in a liquid medium, which was a support media for the stem cell. And that is very relevant and appropriate, but we have to be clear that really no one on the planet is offering both. But right now, what is offered, we think our phase conjugate negentropic time reversal option probably leads the way on the planet. And in that regard, just a little context, maybe Sean would even comment here. So in the past, Sean was very active in distributing both Sandra Rose's EE system and Therify. In fact, he was the leading distributor of Therify at that time. And, my experience, Sean, was that people said that the EE system was useful, but that it took much longer in the EE system. And does it sort of agree with what your experience was, or?
Yeah, 100%. And the one thing also that you that really comes into play with all these technologies, Dan, is that we're talking about one individual person being in a 0 point, right?
Yes.
And so now that's a big deal, like it's like when I talk about it and I explain it, and it's beautiful to have you with me here as I go through this, but it's third generation technology where you're picking up from the notes of Tesla, Likovsky, Rife, and then you get into all the work of Anton Prieri, and then you take all that amazing
Right.
data and say, how do we push forward? And then you do push forward, and then we get into dual tube plasma systems. And then the beautiful part, Dan, is that it's inscribed in hieroglyphics in ancient technology. And it's like, whoa, we're on the cutting edge, and now we're figuring out, like with many things, and this is another great subject because this is something you're also very knowledgeable on. The ancients, as we might call them, off-planet technology was actually being used thousands of years ago. So perhaps it's a rediscovery of off-planet technology that we're getting back to thanks to your work and thanks to the work of all those around you. But if anybody really wants to get into what we would call quote unquote medbed technology, for me, it's really in many ways, I would call it off-planet technology that has, made its way to the planet, and it comes in various forms, shapes, and sizes. But there's nothing out there on the planet Earth right now that's more powerful than the technology that you're producing. And there was a guy named Kevin, who you've been talking to, that came by here. He was the guy that came in from Orlando. And he just purchased a plasma or a Phiray system, I believe. But he came in and he's like a lot of us, even myself at some point, where he's like, hey, I really want to get all the best technology, and I just got this, and I want to. And he's like, what else is out there? I said, Kevin, you just hit the pinnacle, brother. There is nothing. You can go out and spend a lot more money. You're not going to get anything that's more powerful than this Phiray system right now. And all the systems are extremely powerful, and they all have their niche of what they're really good for addressing. But and Dan, the cost of this thing is it's so affordable now that anybody and everybody can have it out there. And that's the beauty even here of what I'm doing, is that with the technology, and right behind me is the Phiray system, which really deserves its own grand entrance here. This is technology that I'm seeing in real time on a day-to-day basis. It's really having a huge impact on many people, and some of those people have had access to what we might call quote unquote real med beds, which is a very generic term because, as you stated, nobody's really got the accurate definition, and there's multiple types. But when it comes to rejuvenation, there's not a technology on the planet Earth that I've seen, found, or heard about that can touch anything that you're producing right now.
That's so kind of you. Yes. And to try to be then more specific for science-based people here, that the evolution here appears to be Likovsky knew about golden ratio, but he didn't use plasma. And then Antoine Prieri used plasma rather effectively, and he approximated golden ratio and approximated phase conjugation, but didn't understand conjugation. He didn't know that he needed opposing pairs, for example. So we evolved nicely beyond that with the Therify, where we did use opposing pairs. We knew what phase conjugation was, and we knew it had to tune to Planck. And Therify is so effective. For years was wonderful, but a bit overpriced, 30,000 bucks. Oh my God! But then the Phiray, what we did is we radically increased the number of harmonics in golden ratio phase conjugate, all the way from the infrasound, the ELF phase conjugate, low frequency, the Schumann cascade, all the way up to the optics in the plasma noble gas optical phase conjugation. So we call that extremely broad spectral, and broad spectral in the specific sense that we use approximately 4 to 6 times the number of harmonics in the Phiray. And then radically, in addition to that, we use a super powerful magnetic coil with the world's most powerful Schumann harmonic cascade in phase with. So I was just upstairs with my little toothache, and I used actually the magnetic coil and that fire crystal, and boy, I could feel it was wonderful, amazing. And it's true. Right now, the pain is gone. But anyway, just to say, so the evolution appeared to be the accuracy of the conjugation based on Planck and the harmonic inclusiveness. And also the Phiray is very programmable, which the Therify was not. So we say the Phiray is 2 to 4 times more powerful, about 1/4 the cost. And whereas the EE system originally is using only the harmonics you could produce with basically a TV screen. So it was relatively limited. You'd have neither the ELF or the plasma level, but they used multiple screens and they would do it for 8 hours at a time. So you can see how this evolved into more and more accurate. And Sean uses the right term in the still point. That is the right term, because the still point is where the centripetal force produces negentropy, literally where it all turns inside out. And we want to talk a little bit about then comparing that to your experience with the PZOFire as well. So Sean is the voice of experience here, and we have so many people asking for more detailed advice on, how to use, how long the sessions should be, for example. So please, Sean, maybe tell us more about your experience, please.
Yes. So Dan, one of the other things that we've got here, which is a technology, is a body bioscan system, right? So this really comes into play when we're using the PiezoFire, because I can run a complete body scan on somebody within about 10 minutes, and then I can get some really good feedback on areas of the body that we might want to focus attention on. And so the beauty of the Phiray to kind of, or the, the piezo plasma fire, is to initially get a sort of an understanding of what is the situation. Now, many people already come in here and they'll say, optic nerve is all messed up. Or I've had a lot of people with heart issues that have said my heart is not running at full speed. It's 20%, 30%. So there are times when I do get people that come in and I can specifically go in. And for me, everything I do is in layers. So, I like to use all the different systems, and they all have a beautiful contribution that they make to achieving homeostasis. But there is a point also where I can come in and say, hey, we've got some numbers here on this part of your body that I feel we need to get some attention to. And I'm just going to pull up real quick the app, which the Flame and Sound is just an absolutely brilliant piece of technology. But then I'll come into my little phone here and I'll pick the areas of the body that I want to give some special love and attention to, and then I'll run that. The one thing I will say to everybody about time of use and everything else, everything that you do is going to be measured on consistency of use. That's going to be the most important thing, is being consistent. The time of use can be adjusted. So the time of use, any time that you can spend, but I would say after 15 to 20 minutes max. Now, each system's a little more powerful than the other. So with all that being said, there are some considerations there that you can make, but ultimately consistency is going to be the prime thing, because the body, when it's taking that energy after 5 to 7 minutes, is dancing and jumping for joy. And so that could be enough. But if you're going to be consistent and using it at least 3 days a week, that is going to be the ultimate telling tale. So when people come out to visit me, I usually tell them, if you're going to come out here and be with me for a minimum of 3 days, because I want to have at least 3 days to kind of get the body acclimated to the energy. I want to be able to kind of wake things up and get things moving. And Dan, one thing that I notice a lot is that a lot of the now I see a lot of benefit initially using the technology, but I really feel that when the body's getting the energy, it's when the body is sleeping that it's really going into that mode where all that energy and all that information is being processed, and the body now is taking everything that it got hours before and is really starting to process that and make all those different changes. So I find that a good night's sleep, and there's other things obviously that you're very well aware with hydration and replacing minerals in the body and all those different things. But the term that I use, and this is not a medical term, but the term I use is sleeping is healing. And so when you're in the sleeping phase, that's when your body is actually making the changes that it got from the information that it processed earlier in the day. So I don't always go by the initial feeling that I hear or the feedback I get initially from the initial time in the machine, but I always tell them, get a good night's sleep. The grounding part of it also, which I'm going to let you kind of go into more of that, is also a very important component. But what I really want is I want the feeling of the next day. I want to have the feeling of, how did you wake up and how do you feel now? And that's when I really start processing it. And if you understand in many situations that the situations and conditions that we're dealing with are built up over a process of weeks, months, and years, that to get the results that you're looking for, although they're highly accelerated, we just need a little bit of time to work with, because there's different types of deterioration in the body that are at different levels for different people. One thing that I'll acknowledge on this call is that I got a scan done and I found out that my pancreas was in very it was not in a happy space. And I started using some of the technology on it, and then I reran a scan, and I didn't see a lot of improvement initially, but immediately what that told me is that this has been an ongoing issue that I was completely unaware of, and it's probably been going on for a very long extended period of time, and I just need to be a little bit patient. One thing that I know you're very familiar with, everything that we do is based on 369, which will be 30, 60, 90 days. So anything and everything that we're talking about, we're always looking at a 90-day protocol and a 90-day evaluation. It's like you want to give the body the time that it needs to make the changes that it needs. And it's interesting, Dan, what we find is sometimes in week 1 or 2, there's very minimal changes. Then in week 3, it's like, boom, the thing goes off the charts. And now there's been a huge transition in the body, in the back, or whatever it is that we're working with now. It is really accelerating, the response. And all of a sudden something is triggered within the body or something has come about. And now that person is really seeing a huge amount of improvement in a very short time span. So with all that being said, I want to throw it back to you to kind of get some feedback on some of that.
Yes, well, it's beautiful that you have so much experience. And I also think it's wonderful you're using the scanner. A lot of people use GDV, but this it's very appropriate to have that kind of feedback. And yes, as the intensity of the delivered conjugate field gets greater, for example, from the PZOFire, which is relatively localized, to the plasma. Now remember, the PZOFire is around, I don't know, $700, 700 euros, where the plasmafire.com is battery powered. It can go to a very low frequency, and it's about, I don't know, 2,500 or something. So the Plasmafire is very sweet, very programmable. Patrick builds these, and people love them. And you can also use them in nature, which is wonderful. Onward up to more and more powerful with Phiray.com, you have that ability to deliver a very large number of harmonics, which is, by the way, you can choose 9 or 12 multiples in the cascade. You can have very harmonic rich, very powerful, and the power levels are programmable. And it's true that the app that Patrick showed you there, Flame and Sound, part of the Flame and Mind suite, also from Patrick Botti, that can dump directly to the PiezoFire, very powerful, very wonderful, and directly to the Plasmafire system. And indirectly, you can also dump to the Phiray.com with a minor file format adaptation, which is available very quickly through Nick, who is our engineer on this. But then to go back to what Sean was saying, that the need for grounding increases with the increased power density of this delivered still point, because essentially what you're delivering is spin density. And what that spin density consumes is hydration. Because literally, as you get to the implosion point, what is consumed actually is hydration because it's, wetness, permission to touch, the implosion, however you look at it. And also, it means that, the ice skater is pulling in her arms and therefore speeding up. And as she pulls in her arms and speeds up her spin, the requirements for her balance gets more and more disciplined. It has to be more and more perfect in that balance. And for that to happen during that increase in spin, the body needs hydration and grounding. And the grounding is specifically your phase relationship to Earth. In practice, it means, wash your face afterward and drink water, or even better yet, get in water, take a shower, anything, walk barefoot on the earth or something natural, so that grounding and hydration is very relevant and important. And it's true. So then maybe we should talk a little bit about the difference between the kinds of experience you've had with PZOFire versus, say, Phiray or plasma fire. I just, Carlos was here yesterday, made a film with us, and Carlos had, pretty much whole spine issues with his mother, major spinal issues with his mother. And he put this across her spine, the piezo, and had amazing results. So we say the piezo fire is localized, but actually, if people get to that still point and relax, you can almost have full body kinds of experiences with something so humble looking.
Yeah, this is really an amazing and very beautiful technology. And I love the fact that you've got, the dual discs. It's actually two discs that come with, or two sets of discs, and you switch and use one set first time, second set the other. For anybody out there that's not familiar with this technology, you just get a little phone jack that you plug in, and this plugs right into your phone jack, and it requires very little. I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, but it doesn't require much power at all. So what we're really using this a lot for, as you just mentioned, is people with spinal injuries.
Mhm.
We've got a lot of people that we deal with that have back accidents, and people, honestly, Dan, that have been um, in a situation where they're partially paralyzed for very extended periods of time. And we basically advocate that they put this to use. Now, the beautiful part of this is that, like we said earlier, it's really not much of a commitment. We're just saying plug it in, put one on, on one side, one on the other, and just give it about 10, max 15 minutes per day. Really, it's all about the consistency of use more so than the time of use. And I think that that's important, because if somebody even has 5 minutes, use the 5 minutes, that's okay. And don't skip a day because you couldn't somehow figure it in. But for people, a lot of the people that we deal with that are bedridden, it's very important that we've got a technology that's very easy for them to use. They do not have to get up out of bed. They do not have to get up and go to an EE center, or they don't have to go anywhere. They can literally, in their bed, start this rejuvenation process. And so anything internally, and this gets into anything within inside the body. So it could be any of your internal organs, it could be heart, lung, kidneys. The one thing I will say also about anything related to kidneys is that because of a detox effect that does take place with the kidneys, if in fact you're using it for anything that's kidney related, it would never be used for more than 3 to 5 minutes for the first 7 to 10 sessions, because you do not want to push too much toxic material out into the body. Hertzheimer. So we really just, slow and steady wins the race, I guess is probably the best way of saying it. But the main thing, Dan, that I see is a change in people's demeanor. When you are a person that's been in a bed for 10, 12, 14 years, or you're a person that's been told there's nothing that can be done, and then you start getting technology where you start seeing improvement, all of a sudden it changes the demeanor. The word hope now has come in tenfold, and now all of a sudden it's not about this is the way it's going to be. It's about, no, there just happened to be something that I didn't know about that now is being used. Like you said, all these technologies are very inexpensive. This particularly, as a starter, with all the benefits that this can do, is I mean, it's laughable how powerful it is and how little it costs. So,
Yeah.
when you get into these scenarios where money could perhaps be an issue, but that's really what we're starting to see, and we're actually prescribing or suggesting that people, when they're buying these ICU beds and there's issues that we know can be addressed with these simple technologies, that they incorporate this technology in with the purchase of some of this very high-end medical equipment.
It's so cool. And yeah, so we should review just a little bit about the basic science of what's happening here. It's beautiful that you have that personal experience with using it. So the basic science is that you have, in the case of the green, you have a piezoelectric speaker. So it's a piezo field, and they're fed very accurate implosive still point phase conjugate pairs. And then next to that, you have a shungite disk, which is a super dielectric, which functions as a lens for that capacitance, making the charge distribution efficient. And then what you do is when that's vibrating implosively with a piezo, and Sean makes the point, it's just the same power that you'd feed to your headphones and your earphones, except that's enough because your
Mhm.
piezoelectric is vibrating a very small, very beautiful sweet spot. And in that sweet spot of capacitive implosion, you're getting spin density, charge density, 0 point, which means successful compression, which means metabolic acceleration, circulation increase, inflammation decrease because it is functionally centripetal in a relatively focused area. So it's like a beautiful touch, a beautiful buzz in exactly where you need it. And so, and the other part is the one pair, as Sean mentioned, this is a piezo pair with shungite, and the other pair, the blue, is a Tesla coil. So you have,
Tesla coil.
yeah, so you have capacitive implosion and then you have inductive implosion. And as Patrick experiments it extensively, it's good to alternate because the body likes to breathe with that difference. So that
Mhm.
you can really create some amazing, even whole body kinds of effect with a simple device. And you know, when we first built this, we had people with they would think it was hernia. We had two people with serious hernia problem, and we helped them dramatically the first session every time. And then burn pain and sharp localized pain, amazing. So
Mhm.
it just was. We had so much fun with this. So yes, so that is a fun system. Anything else we should say about that, or should we go on then to plasma fire
Well,
or
I would just say, also we're using it, people are using it, say, like on the shoulder, and they're using it in the abdominal area. And then, of course, there's hips and other parts of the body where people do have, a lot of pain
yeah.
or issues. And it's just so easy, so small. And honestly, you could be laying on the couch watching TV, plug it into your phone, and just, keep it right there. But, we're really very excited and very excited to be able to to provide this option for people that come to us that are dealing with specific issues.
And especially originally for localized issues. And I'm glad you mentioned the shoulder. We first started with Dominic, who directs our conference here. I'm sorry, Emmanuel. He had this he fell down in the orchestra, very painful, dislocated shoulder for weeks. And the best thing he ever found, he loved this. He immediately had to get it. And he just, localized pain. It's just, anyway. So I carry on. That's the fun part. So
That's the
what
beauty.
should we talk about next then, Sean? Should we go on to?
Well, let's go to plasma fire, and
Okay,
then we'll finish off with, we'll kind of go up the scale, if you will.
sure. Good.
Um, Dan, I've had that technology now for about 3 years, maybe 3.5 years.
Plasma fire.
And I just I could never live without it personally.
Mm.
Like the whole thing about the whole thing, like there's a lot of different places we can go with the ability or what the technology does. Usually it starts with third dimensional body stuff, right? So we get into our third dimensional body issues. But for me personally, I've used it a lot over the years for I had kidney stones. I've had a lot of internal issues that I've had to work with. And, it's been very helpful for that. But then you get into other things like pineal, and then you get into other things like thyroid, and then you get into liver and all these other different things where just 5 minutes once or twice a month for detox is very important for bodily maintenance. I never do a session without running full chakra cascade. And as you can see there with some of the work that was documented, the effects that it has just on the blood for declustering red blood cells and lowering your blood viscosity, and all these different things that it does from a bodily maintenance, it's just absolutely fantastic. Now, when I combine that with the scanner and I go in and say, whoa, what do we got here? And I can see very specific parts of the body that need some tender loving care. Now I can go right to the app and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and we're going to run 15 minutes. I usually, for anybody that's new, that's not used to the technology, 10 minutes, 15. The other thing about that particular piece of technology is that the power of the unit is controlled on the volume of the unit itself. So if I'm running the app off my phone, my volume control is going to control the power that's running the spheres. And so less is more, and slow and steady wins the race. So I'm always going to do it at a lower, I don't need to crank this thing up. It's very functional at a very low power grid, but I'm very sensitive to the size of the person, the age of the person, the condition of the person that I'm dealing with. That's all adjusted. So an older person that's very frail is not going to get anywhere near the amount of energy that somebody, that's in their 30s or 40s and 200 plus would get, because the size of the body that I'm dealing with is much different. And therefore I can make those adjustments. But as a general rule of thumb, 10 to 15 minutes max to get started is all that you need. And then I'll break it down. I usually try to run, depending on the person, I try to run 3 different frequency sets, which I'll usually interchange within a 5-minute period of time. So I'll figure out what my highest priority is, and they might come in and I might say, like myself, maybe my pancreas needs, some attention. I'll run some frequencies there, maybe 5, 7, 8 minutes. But then what I'm going to say is, okay, there's going to be other parts of the body that I do want to still put the technology into. So for me personally, I feel like the detox is a very important part of the function with pineal, or excuse me, with thyroid and with liver and with kidney. And so just a minute or two there. Now, if you understand how big your thyroid gland is, then you know that you're probably not going to need to spend an excessive amount of time, but 2 or 3 minutes with the thyroid is perfect. And then I always want to bring the metaphysical part into it and the other energy fields in my body. So like I said, I usually like to run the pineal, and I love to run the full chakra cascade, which is how I end pretty much every single session, is running full chakra cascade. And then that can be, I can manipulate that a little bit based on the person and based on the session. And then, for somebody like myself that uses it a lot, I might say, well, now I'm going to go a little bit longer on a couple of these, and I might poke around. But, to circle back, the beauty of the plasma fire is that I can really get into some very specific parts of the body. Now, the other thing that's interesting is I get a lot of people here with knee problems, ankle, foot issues. As you know, with the app, everything starts from the foot and goes all the way up to the crown chakra. And so, you can really dial in. I will put it in there. I get a lot of people in here that have leg, knee, hip injuries. And so I can run very specific frequency sets for that part of the body. And then, anything in sort of the pelvic region, I can go right in there. I deal with a lot of people that have issues within the pelvic region, for men and women both, which would be obviously a little different for each. But there's frequency sets that are in there that can specifically address those types of issues. And then I've had amazing stories, Dan, with people with heart issues. I mean, before I got the Phiray system in here, there was a gentleman named Bob who still comes in. And it was actually interesting because I was here on a Sunday working, and I usually, if I'm here by myself, it's a big facility. This place I'm in is 8,000 square feet. I will usually lock the door if we're not open for business, just because I might be in the back and I don't want to have people coming in. But I'm up front at my desk, and this older couple, they come up and they're trying to open the door, and I'm like, who's coming in on a Sunday at 2:00 in the afternoon? This is unheard of. But I went out, I opened the door, I said, hey, how you doing? And I greeted the couple, and beautiful people, Judy and Bob. And Judy said, well, I'd heard something about you've got this technology here, and I saw a video. I'm not sure how they found me, but they did, and they were local here in the area. And she comes in, she goes, well, I'd really like to learn more about it, because my husband is running at 20% heart capacity. And they've been married 40 plus years. I think they just celebrated an anniversary. This really is off subject, but I have to say this just because I feel it's funny. Here's Bob saying, oh yeah, no big deal, it's 20%. And here's his wife going, look, I've been married to you 42 years. You're going to do what I tell you to do. And if I can find something to help you, you're going to do it. You're not going to pass this off as nonchalant because I love you and I care about you and you need to step up. And so, but Bob is the sweetest guy. But to make a long story short, she's explaining to me that they did a test with him. And when they tested his heart function, it was 20%. Within 3 weeks, and he was only coming in 2 to 3 times a week, we doubled that within the first 3 weeks. And when he went back, they measured his heart capacity and it measured at 40 plus.
Hmm.
And so that was a big deal because it really took him out of like I don't
Yeah.
want to call it a danger zone, but it took him out of a spot where, he was at a spot where, it was very stressful for him. It was obviously very stressful for his wife. And we've had many different people come in that have had those simple or similar types of issues with something related to the heart. And we've seen very good improvement from that.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I'll segue into is that we've made this a facility that's available for super soldiers.
Uh,
And so we've got our SSP people that come in here, and James and James Rink and some of
Sure.
the other folks that
Yeah.
are
Did
kind
engine.
of in that whole group.
Right.
And we've had a lot of them come in and also get really good and see really good benefits. And James has been here now, I want to say 4 times. And him and Catherine and another gentleman, Colin, they've kind of put the word out amongst the community that this is a place where they're more than welcome to come visit us at any time. And we've really seen a lot of different benefits that they've gotten, each one of them a little bit different based on what, is going on with them internally and externally. But there's been a lot of documentation with that as well. And so, I've seen a lot of issues with things like optic nerve. One of the things about the PZOFire is that I can dial in very specific frequency sets for eyes and very specific parts of the body. And we've seen like people come in wearing sunglasses and leave without wearing sunglasses. And they don't need sunglasses, which to me is really a telling tale. That those are some other ones that I could just right off the bat just come to mind. I just had actually a gentleman in here on he dropped in out of the blue. Like this happens a lot. I try to get people to schedule appointments, but if they don't, they don't. He's a former law enforcement guy, and he got injured on the job. He's walking with a walker. He's very a lot of pain. He's in a lot of rough shape. He actually came in for medical equipment. I'm like, no, what you actually really need is back here. Come with me. He follows me back. I said, you need to get in this system. Now, Dan, right behind me, it's always camera left, camera right. I always mess that up. And you were just talking about this little handpiece right here
Yeah, the magnetic coil.
with the handpiece. Um, and so I literally had to help get his feet up onto the bed. That's how disabled this gentleman was. And what I did, he had a back injury, really bad back injury. But we put him in the Phiray system, and I took that and put it in directly on his back. Now he had a like a belt that he wore that's kind of like those belts you use when you're going to lift something heavy, not like at a gym, but just, and I basically tucked it right in there, and we put him in for about a 10 to 12 minute session. And when he got out, he felt an immediate relief of pain from having the handpiece in there. Now he came down from DC or Baltimore, which is about 2 hours north of me. But now, even though he came here for one reason, he's going to be a person that's going to start coming in at least 2 or 3 times a week because, he's been like that for 2 or 3 years. He's seen little or no progress. If anything, he's regressing instead of improving. But these are the kind of things where it just absolutely excites me because we're making this technology accessible. That's really what our goal is to get this out and develop these real life case studies where real life individual people from all shapes and sizes. I've also got little kids. I don't remember the name of the disease, but there's a disease where kids don't grow. They stay very small. And one of my dearest friends has a child that has that. So we're just doing very short 1 to 2 minute sessions with that child. We're putting them in the Phiray system to see if we can get, some type of benefit with that, because when we're getting back into reversing everything back into perfect order, when we talk about,
That reversal.
negentropy and reversal of spin and reversing things back into perfect order, in my world, Dan, and the world that you've created, anything and everything is possible. We live in a world of infinite miracles and infinite possibilities. The word no is not ever in my vocabulary. The word is let's do it and let's see what we can do. And there's always, and the key word is hope. We're talking about conscious, intelligent energy fields as well, which we haven't segued much into that in this call, but we're talking about technology. If you really want to talk about technology that's advanced, talk about mindful and intelligent energy fields where intention and all these other things are also brought into the picture. And the other thing, Dan, that we really haven't gotten into, but we should probably segue into it eventually once we get to Phiray, is that we're not just talking about third dimensional bodily function and improvement, which is 100% there. The other thing I think it's extremely important is that this is about living to 100 and not coming in with a walker, a wheelchair, a cane. This is about maintaining good health. Granted, people that are having severe health issues are always looking for everything, and we're here with open arms. But this is for the everyday person to maintain good health, to maintain vitality, to maintain the life that you want to lead, and get out in front of stuff before there is a breakdown somewhere within the body. And so that's also a very important thing for everybody to understand, that this whole technology has 10% of it or 20% of it is for those that have physical issues, but it's all about staying in front of it. It's about what you would do to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle up until and over 100 years old, and not let the body start breaking down on you. And this technology, which is really a rejuvenation technology, when you're in these energy fields like Phiray, which we'll get to, you're the whole body is in this field. This is not about, now we're talking about segmenting specific parts of the body, but we're talking 10 minutes a session 3 times a week to rejuvenate and maintain youthful, vibrant energy, which is really, everybody's talking about the fountain of youth. It's the energy, it's the body, it's taking care of it. And then, Dan, I'm sorry to go on such a long rant, because I really want to, but I do want to say that, the videos that you're doing with these people on the lucid dreaming, on the enhanced clairvoyance, on the enhanced compassion, and all these other things this is where the technology really gets exciting. This is really what it's there for. And so let me just pass that back to you, because I kind of went on sort of a long rant there.
Oh, it's wonderful. Your enthusiasm is wonderfully contagious. It's great. And that is the point. So we have shown that the frequency signature in university research corresponds, that triggers lucid dreaming and lucidity. Now we actually use Phiray for lucidity in the astral, which is related. This is a compression effect that succeeds in getting your aura dense enough to emit coherent longitudinal to inhabit the array, as it were. And also we might mention that when famously Dan Mack first got his Phiray, he had serious vision problems, and I forget what it was, a 30% increase in visual acuity within days, and it's been replicated. And my famous university lecture on phase conjugate origins of vision, vision is actually how sharp a point comes to the liquid crystal vortex in your synaptic array, and the sharpness of that point, obviously implosion, is the sharpness of perception. So it makes sense that you create that implosion. And just to give a little more background and some other things that Sean so nicely just mentioned. So that little handpiece right on the bed behind Sean there has a magnetic coil in it, and that magnetic coil is fed the full phase conjugate cascade rather powerfully. So it's making literally the most powerful Schumann harmonic magnetic cascade on the planet right from that little coil, which is precisely my old friend Elizabeth Rauscher's FDA trials proving that magnetic cascades were dramatically pain reducing. And she agreed at that time we had invented phase conjugate magnetics. So it makes sense when Sean put that right under the person's back, that now here is a low frequency implosive magnetic cascade going right to the center of where restructuring needs to happen. And the centripetal force then gets more inertia to restructure in the context of the plasma spheres. We should also just say that, so as Sean was talking there, he's talking about using the Flame and Sound app, which is part of Flame and Mind, but the app is very inexpensive and it's very programmable. So you got all those choices of what glands, what body part, etc. And that can be done directly to both PiezoFire.com and PlasmaFire.com. And then indirectly, it's also available in Phiray.com with a minor file format convert, but also Phiray has lots of internal options. But as we say with Phiray, right now, almost all of the beautiful benefits we're getting with Phiray are just with the default options because they're so powerful. One more little thought that as Sean is talking about the SSP experiencers, one thing that came to mind was after Carlos here in Barcelona had shown that our plasma, earlier Therify and now Phiray, was dramatically helpful in inducing hypnosis for therapy, in his case, for family constellation therapy. So you do that kind of hypnosis, and then the body can return in memory to the deep moment of the trauma. Because to relive the trauma is obviously to do the sort. So you got to get to that still point. So actually, obviously, the heart of SSP experiencers is sorting through their trauma so they can get the lost memories back. And so it makes total sense that if you get an implosive field, which is literally hypnotic, what it enables them to do is get the strength to go to the place of maximum pain and refill in the lost memory. And lost memory is ultimately lost soul. So you see how these things fit together.
Yeah, it's actually quite beautiful. Dan, with the negentropy, can you just like you're explaining it is just so much better than mine. But when you talk about time really being a measurement of spin of energy, and negentropy is reversing that back, and when it reverses back, it can only reverse back into perfect order. Can you kind of just maybe give a little bit more detail on how that actually is affecting the body, the cells, and what that field? Because that's really where a lot of the rejuvenation is coming from, is from that field and from that process. Is there anything like your level of understanding, explaining it's a little deeper and better than mine, but for anybody that's out there that's really trying to get the crux of some of the actual physics of what's happening in these systems, especially with the Phiray system. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, our work on the physics of negentropy, which is the origins of negentropy, is the title of my second last book before Plankfire. And now all that work has been verified with very elaborate solid physics and equations in our fractalgut.com. The negentropy study is just there in the last couple of days. But to try to directly answer Sean's useful question, so uh, when they first found a way to cause two lasers to meet in exactly opposite directions, literally, as we say, angstrom level angle accuracy, so that the pine cones kiss noses. And where those pine cones kiss noses, in the case of the laser, is within a very narrow media, which is called a super dielectric. In that case, it was barium strontium titanate, which is just charge distribution efficiency. That's why when you have plasma fire or Phiray, you want organic clothing and organic environment because you need charge distribution efficiency, the high dielectric. So when the pine cones kiss noses accurately in phase conjugate optics, it's the first time they measured and they called it time reversal. But it's interesting, if you actually study what they meant by time reversal, in effect, they meant increased order or literally return to order. We always joke that you can time reverse rusted steel back to order and make it unrusted, but you cannot do the reverse. In other words, you can't time reverse toward disorder. And what that essentially means is that if you think of a stem cell, and what they call dedifferentiate, the original stem of the cell at the base of your spine when you were a zygote, that's the stem cell, right? And at that point, it's extremely dedifferentiated. It can do anything. So if you time reverse a cell, which is called dedifferentiation in the case of making a stem cell, it goes back to the state in which all potential instructions for growth are present, which is to say, the implosion point, both in time and space. So essentially, what time reversal here means is that under the conditions of successful compression, now we know exactly what that is, implosive fractal, successful compression. Under those conditions, the distribution of charge where the pine cones are kissing noses is every wave that does not perfectly fit that implosion place where the pine cones do kiss noses, every wave that is not perfectly in phase with will be self-canceled. So literally what happens is at the burn point of where the pine cones do kiss noses is all waves have to agree, and any wave that doesn't agree is canceled. And that's called negentropy in the sense of it is self-organizing. For example, the harmonics of the Schumann resonance, which you now know are a perfect phase conjugate pump wave tuned to Planck, is the physics of why Earth is proven by Lovelock Gaia hypothesis to be negentropic. It's self-organizing because it is doing fractal implosion.
Just that's such a beautiful, detailed explanation because, ultimately that's the magic, right? That's the magic of the technology right there. And, I always go back to that beautiful image of the dual tube plasma systems inscribed in the hieroglyphics.
Yeah, Egypt.
And
They call it, I will raise a Shem unto the Lord. And they literally meant, they mistranslated that in the Bible. They called, I will put an altar in my church. No, they were installing a time reversed capacitor, a time reversing capacitor to reverse aging. That's the definition of I will raise a Shem unto the Lord. I am making a time reversal device to reverse aging because that's all the Anunnaki ever complained about when they got here. They were aging very fast, catastrophically, they said. So they had to build a Shem unto the Lord, which the altar in the church, it's an implosion capacitor to reverse aging. And that's what's graphed in those two plasma tubes on the Egypt pyramid wall, which is was the logo for Therify, for example. So they were obviously doing time reversal, and they knew, and the name for that happens to be the name of what the logo for Hermes Thoth, which is a caduceus, which today we call phase conjugation. So you see, these things fit together.
yeah, it's beautiful because, when you start getting into the subject of off-planet technology and especially Anunnaki, who are highly advanced, I mean, very, very advanced. And this is technology that they were actually using. And now we've got our hands on it. And thanks to your work, we've rediscovered it. And now we've got it. Dan, the thing that maybe we can start segueing, but the thing I really want to say is that with all the experience that I've had using these technologies over the years, as I said earlier, anybody that's out there thinking that they got to wait for something else somewhere else at some other time else that's all really out the window because there is technology out there now that is available that's extremely powerful, that in my world of reality, which is everything and anything is possible at any given second. And with this type of technology out there, there is hope for those that don't have hope, and there is excitement for those that have been, thinking that, this is the way it's going to be. And if you understand, even if you don't understand the physics of it, if you understand that there's a lot of stuff that's out there that the general public is not yet aware of that is available, and it's accessible. You come visit us anytime you want. But this is where we're living in a world of infinite miracles and infinite possibilities. And with this technology, the ability that it has to rejuvenate, to enhance the life of people on a third dimensional bodily level, but then help take us to the higher spiritual levels of really being able to tap into our essence of really who we are as spiritual beings and get back to that and bring us into those frequencies where clairvoyance and telepathy and Akashic records or the ancients and getting into these frequencies and energy fields, and the work that you're doing with these gentlemen with the lucid dreaming and going, I mean, all these spiritual gifts, this is where the thing really gets exciting. I mean, if we want to really have some fun and get excited, let's talk about all the spiritual things that this does to raise your frequency and really turn you into a spiritual being having a human experience and not the human being that has an occasional spiritual experience, right?
Uh,
And I feel like that is the pinnacle of where this thing
yeah,
goes. And we might not be able to get into all that conversation today, but we are just scratching the surface on the potential of what this technology can
yeah,
do. And
that's right.
if you want to really talk bed beds and you want to talk about all that, we're going to go back. You can't know the past or the future, the present. You can't know the present until you know your future and your past, right? And if you understand that your past gets into where all this technology has been here and it's coming back to light and you're getting access to it, and you understand the history of where that came from and who brought that technology down there, and then you think about, well, when these quote unquote med beds come, where are they coming from? Well, guess what? They're coming from probably a lot of the same people that were using them thousands of years ago. And, but it's here now. There's like this whole concept of waiting and waiting, and which is fine if that's but for those people that are out there that are, I always say, Dan, the video found you, right? You didn't find this video. The video found you because perhaps there was a time, place, and circumstance where there was a 30-second clip in this video that there was something that you needed to hear. But there is a lot of stuff that's out there. And Dan, my greatest gift will be the distribution of your technology. The greatest gift that I can perform in this lifetime will be getting this technology out to people. I know I don't, Dan, I know you well enough to know that you're the most loving, compassionate, caring person I probably have ever met in my life that has made contributions to this planet on a scale that I can't even put into words, that we probably won't even be able to conceptualize for hundreds of years, when you're in the spiritual body floating around somewhere. But I do know that the gift is always, if I just helped one person, it was worth it. If I took one person out of a wheelchair and I gave them the hope and I was giving them the ability to walk, to be with their grandkids, there was one person that I could say, look, it doesn't have to be this way. Maybe there's a way that we can give you more time with your wife or whatever it was. If it was one person, but Dan, at this point in my life, it's been hundreds of people. And I realized that to me, there's no greater gift than to be able to give back and to make this technology out there. I'm 59 years old, and I will tell you that a large proportion of my life, I was fishing around going, what the heck am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing? Like, I don't feel like I'm on purpose. I don't feel like I really know what I should be doing right now. And I've done a lot of good. Like, we've built a dozen or more hospitals in Africa. I built hospitals in Mexico. We've saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives where this technology and this ability to get this medical equipment into areas that are very primitive, that didn't have the funds or whatever. And we've got counts of Sierra Leone and Kenya and all these, Ghana. But when I'm dealing with people on a one-on-one basis, and I'm coming now to technology that's just absolutely mind-blowing, I can't say thank you enough for everything that you've done in this lifetime to contribute to make this happen. It's on a scale that's beyond the beyond. Discovering how does gravity, what does that actually mean? What is the physics of gravity, that all these things.
It's,
And I always end this on a note, because we've done many calls now, and I love you dearly, that I know that your greatest mission in this lifetime will be to give kids a soul and to understand the purpose of soul, and to try to work with this time, place, circumstance that we're at in this reality where we're dealing with AI and a lot of things that are basically depleting the soul. And so, I always like to give you credit for that, because on top of the hundreds of other things that you're doing, we didn't even get into the plasma water for agriculture. I mean, there's a dozen things that we could sit here. We could do calls. This could be a TV show to go for the next 6 months, on all these other things. But, as I usually end these calls, man, I always just got to say thank you. It's an honor. I mean, it's a very humbling experience. I don't know if I ever told you this, but as long as I'm on my blurb, when I first got PZOFire, and I'm a guy in the medical industry and I know it pretty well, I was so scared to represent or sell that technology, because I thought, I'm representing Dan and Patrick, And this technology is unlike anything else I've ever dealt with. Not only is it unlike anything else, the knowledge base that I need to get to really be able to represent this technology is not knowledge that I'm familiar with. I have to literally take this like I'm a kid again in high school or college, and I have to take notes and I have to watch. And I've watched hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of your videos. Many of them I watched 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Each time I watch it, I get a greater depth of understanding because there's always that base level knowledge that you kind of have to start assembling some of this. But I was terrified. I said, I'm not trying to sell this yet. I'm using it and I'm learning. And I think finally it was Patrick that said, look, Sean, you know enough. Just go out there and start selling the technology. And then once I got to that point, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling comfortable now doing this. And then the kindness with you and Patrick both to spend time with me and to do videos with me where I can come on as a student, which I'm always going to be the eternal student, and ask the questions that the general public, is asking because I get those and I kind of relay them to you. And then I can use these videos to say, well, I don't understand it clearly as well as Dan does, but here, watch this video or watch Patrick's video. So, Dan, I'm sorry, I've gone on so many rants today. I'm always so excited to get on the calls with you, but
That's
thank you for
wonderful.
everything you've done. I mean, the number of people that you're helping on so many different levels, dimensions is just it's absolutely mind blowing, and I can't put into words how grateful I am. So.
You're a little too wonderful. My lady Valerie is going to think my head's getting too big over here. So, but
That's the beauty of a saint. A saint is always the most humble person. You try to compliment a saint, and they just say, "Hey, yeah, I can't, I can't accept that." But
but
no, truly, I really do mean it. I mean, I
thank you.
I I think that I speak for all your viewers and all your listeners that might not get that opportunity to really present that to you. But I know I'm speaking for a planet and probably a lot of people off planet that are also tuned in. But the gifts that you've given us and the world are just beyond comprehension. And it's just getting started, Dan. That's the beauty of this whole thing. We're talking about technology that's really, and it's only been out 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, like
Yeah.
the amount of good and the amount of information that these videos put out now to help more people say, well, what is that he's talking about? The one thing that was good about the EE system is that it really opened people up to that there's other optional technology. They did a brilliant job on a marketing level to say, look, there's a lot of technology that's out there. And then when you get into that field and you really start looking at it, and you've got a med spa or a wellness center, and you say, well, what else can I do that'll enhance, the outcomes for the people that are coming to me? And then you catch this video and go, wow, what are these guys talking about? And you dig in and look into it. I mean, it's so inexpensive, I mean, it's just you've made it affordable
Yeah.
for
We,
everybody. And
we succeeded with the PZOFire and with plasma fire and now with Phiray particularly. Each one, I mean, Verify was orders of magnitude more powerful, we think, than EE and of course Phiray now. But I'd like to go into a little bit of the understanding the simple science again, pure principle of some of the things that Sean was just saying so wonderfully. So the core science of what we call physicsofsoul.com is that when the body has access to the right kind of compression, call it sacred space or call it bliss experience. In both cases, it's a fractal kind of compression. The kind, for example, that's available in a sacred site or stone circle or in a cathedral and a magnetic line cross at sunrise, sunset, all places where the compression can become centripetal. And that is the core to everything we do. Origin of centripetal forces. And that is what physics makes. That's why physicists don't know why objects fall to the ground. They don't know the cause of gravity. They don't know what holds galaxies together, simply because they don't understand the origin of centripetal forces. And by the way, fractalgut.com has just proven, and I do mean proven, that we can predict in detail galaxy formation geometries exactly now that we understand why objects fall to the ground. So we can also predict this in your body. But point being that when your body has access to centripetal experiences, your kids get to live in nature. They're not stuck in metal buildings. Their body begins to emit coherently in the longitudinal array, the Ba from the Ka, as we say. And that array is the collective unconscious, the lucid dreaming, the communion of saints. That's where you go when you dream and when you die. You inhabit a larger array by leaping from the vortex inside your head to a vortex outside your head non-destructively. Now, that's going to be trickier in a metal building in an ugly city, but if you got some nature where you can embed in that array, so that it's that centripetal force which is key to physicsofsoul.com. And that's also why when people have, and we had said even 30% of the people in our plasma devices were having some form of bliss experience. Some form of bliss experience means, oh, I finally got to that still point. And then my hologram could unpack into the bigger array so that you went from the compression in the rows to the unpacking of the rows. And we call that bliss. Well, that's the point that the reason you start to have bliss experience and sharpened vision is that you've experienced successful compression. So that brings us to the sort of spiritual development here is the last thing I wanted to speak about. Sean mentioning the repeated, especially through Nicholas, our original engineer on Phiray, repeated experience people have of clairvoyance after Phiray, actually. And actually, Carlos experienced this in Barcelona, and Nicholas reported. Now we have probably dozens of people get some form of clairvoyance. Very particularly and characteristically, there they are. They're holding this magnetic coil, which is obviously implosive Schumann phase conjugate pump wave. And if they really relax and they get very still, and they allow their aura to focus into the center of that coil and get very still there, they begin to start to notice that their body has become transparent. In other words, it's like an echogram. It's literally like an echogram. It's echolocation, except it's longitudinal coherence echolocation, otherwise known as clairvoyance. It's medical intuitive. So many people, if you have a little bit of clairvoyance, Phiray can be very helpful because you relax, you get still, and then you begin and you notice you can see through your body. It's literally become transparent. The reason it's become transparent is the longitudinal waves bounce through and they bounce off the nodes of compression, like the nodes of fractal compression. So what it is, it's an X-ray in a different sense. The X-ray is the one-pointed longitudinal emission from the focal point. You've got the focal point. You're holding it in your hand. You relax, you get still, and you look through it, like through closed eyes, and you center yourself in the middle of that coil. And if you're very relaxed and still enough, suddenly you begin to notice bright little shadows, and you realize you're seeing through your body. And that is an introduction to the physics, and I do mean the physics of what clairvoyance is. So this is now you're getting the sense here. Oh, all these other faculties, lucid dreaming, etc. It's all about getting coherent in that array. The same reason that you put an obelisk, as I taught Tony Rodriguez, if you put an obelisk over big water veins, it's how the Romans solved their water pollution problems because it became self-organizing. Hello. So once you get the focal point, so you just an introduction of ways to think about what we're doing when we create this still point.
Dan, one last thing. The obelisk, I've seen the videos on that. Those guys were masterful to understand that they could put an obelisk to do that. The Phiray crystal and crystal interaction with the Phiray system.
And the fire, please.
Can you just talk a little bit about that process of what that actually does to the crystal and with the energy of the crystal by having it in the Phiray?
Desk. Yeah. Yes. We were just going to grab a fire crystal. So at at firecrystal.com, PHIRE, firecrystal.com. Just grab one of those. Yeah. So we took the design for the Atlantean fire crystal. And here, I'm just going to open this one right here on the spot. So by having flat sides instead of the tapered sides, because the tapered side from Marcel Vogel, and I knew Marcel well, can approximate phase conjugation, but it can't do it accurately. Whereas in this case, because the sides are precise parallel in the precise hex, you get this negative cool wind, negative ion breeze, which I'm feeling right now very well. And Marcel did one thing correct. He used the breath as a phase conjugate pump wave. For example, the Mayer wave breath, the 10-second breath. So when you pump this with your breath, you can feel something come out. What's coming out is a directional, and in this case, focused compressional longitudinal wave, sometimes called scalar. Now, I was just working on my toothache, which right now, actually, my toothache is pretty much gone. So I took that coil in one hand upstairs, and I took this in the other hand, and I had that sweet spot between them. And boy, that was a buzz. People feel a buzz. Now, so actually, in practice, your breath, or ideally, any one of our devices, PiezoFire, PlasmaFire, or Phiray, the exact frequency of that device is exactly the best possible phase conjugate pump wave to trigger a fire crystal. So you've got the crystal, you're using your breath and or a device, and now you put that. Obviously, you focus it where it hurts. It's simple because it's directing a compressional wave. Now, actually, what I found is when I have the two devices, I got that coil from the Phiray on one hand and this thing in the other, and steer that to wherever the problem is. Boy, that is a buzz. So
Yeah.
it's creating a directional longitudinal scalar precisely where you focus it. And then you want to get rather still. But as we joke, every single person who's ever picked up one of these and felt the buzz, every single person who ever done that immediately wants one.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely amazing.
They're cool.
I do want to also, yeah, and that is really, I love the fact that we're integrating the crystals in with the technology.
Yes.
Um, and one last thing also, I know that not on this call, but I've been getting a lot of internal messages saying that I've got to see if we can do a call sometime in the future on ways to enhance fertility, which I think I emailed you that. We're not going to do that today, obviously, but I feel like there's a lot of young people, and I feel like the environmental conditions right now, there's a lot of challenges that young people are having trying to conceive and have kids. I know that over the years, with all the videos you've done, you've put out information about not on a full moon, different little things, but maybe we can do a call at a later date that will talk about the physics of conception, which then gets into all the physics of centripetal and the whole process of fertility in itself. But I've gotten this like 3 times where I've woken up at like 2 in the morning saying, we've got to ask Dan to do a video on the physics of fertility and just put something out there for the young people that are trying to have kids that might be hitting roadblocks. And that's totally off subject right now, but I just want to throw that out there as, perhaps a little teaser that maybe in the future, when time permits, you can do a video on that. I'd be more than happy to jump on it with you, but I feel like there's something there that I need to just address with you and say,
Oh,
hey, when you have some extra time.
that makes me want to mention my pet peeve in that regard. Here's my pet peeve, okay? Wilhelm Reich writes one of the fattest books ever called The Function of the Orgasm. And I've studied that. And you know what? I don't think he actually had a clue. Sorry, you Reichian guys. But we know. He said, oh, well, if you have enough orgasms, you ain't going to get cancer. Well, sorry, Wilhelm. There's more to it than that, which is basically the orgasm is a name for the body emitting a strong, coherent ultraviolet microwave and longitudinal bubble, the tantric aura bubble. And what that does is that creates a possibility for a plasma communion with, starting with your partner, but ultimately the plasma communion is ancestor memory, which, by the way, is the only Aboriginal name for God, which is why in Celtic times the grandparents were present for the first ritual of the bride and the groom. Why? Collective intention imploding and creating communion of saints. I mean, communion with ancestor memory. So obviously, our devices, since they can help contribute to bliss process, and there are stories. We definitely have plasma stories about better lovers experiences. That's definite. Under the right circumstances, you can definitely increase the aura. The point is to understand the function of that cocoon. Your aura is taking the best juices of your body to emit a plasma cocoon. And obviously, all of that life force energy to make this incredible plasma cocoon called orgasm or bliss, the body doesn't do that for no biologic reason. No, 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 no. There's a survival reason built into there, which is communion of saints, ancestor memory, the survival value of having intense phone call with ancestor memory. Ancestor memory is a hologram of a survival library. That's what it is. So to have access to that kind of bliss process, which obviously relates to fertility, because when you can do that kind of stuff, then you can bring in the big souls. You get that communion. So this is the electrical, spiritual understanding of the function of the orgasm, which unfortunately I think Wilhelm Reich didn't really quite get it, actually. So, but it does have to do with fertility in the sense that this is what invites the communion with ancestors, out of which arises the incarnation of great souls.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
Dan, it's been an amazing call. They always are. And I'm just always so grateful to, like I said, to just be able to spend this time with you and to be able to share, the feedback on all these amazing technologies that I'm so blessed to be able to provide and get out to the general public. And you did mention earlier in the video, I do want to just say that Mel Carmine and Maria also were my very loving and gifted persons that also helped me a lot with the Therify project that we took on as a team. It was absolutely very successful. And once again, we're getting this Phiray system and being able to get this in the hands of people. So thank you once again for everything, and God bless you. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
oh, you're a sweetheart there, Sean. Thank you for being our partner. We're having fun. We're going to have more fun. And you're right. The fun is helping people, really helping. And that's what we're here for. So thank you and blessings. We're going to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
It was wonderful. Thanks, Sean.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.